All right, hello everybody. It's Crazy John Carrots here on OSH Radio, and it has been a long time since we did a new interview, and I've actually been doing lots of interviews on the gentleman that we're interviewing today's show. And today we have with us Steele Archer. He's kind of giggling. I think this is the first time he's been interviewed and been on the other side. It is actually, isn't it, Steele? This is kind of the first time you've gotten to be interviewed yourself, right?
Oh, I got interviewed by Ben Zion on the Futurist New Deal, and that was kind of interesting. That was a good experience. But yeah, apart from that, no, I haven't really been on too many shows. Just been on Detonation, where we're putting death out of business.
And Detonation is your show that you do out of Australia. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about your show that you do.
So Detonation is the tagline is mainstreaming transhumanism, because transhumanism is kind of cool. It's this kind of cool concept that humans can evolve beyond what their evolutionarily their biological capacity is. So Darwinianly, humans evolve up to a certain point, but then transhumanists kind of think, well, we can use our consciousness and our tools and our devices within our head and our ideological devices in order to go beyond what that evolutionary capacity is. And some people say that's just being human, and some people say it's transhuman. And I think that you have to think in the context of it's a new technology, it's a new technological path in order to go up and over and beyond what we are, in order to enhance ourselves so that we can have, longer lifespans, better health spans, better, super happiness, super well-being, that we can explore the universe, explore the infinite, and come up with solutions to different problems that are pervasive throughout human society.
Now you're on a new channel. You're on just a straight Detonation station channel on YouTube, and I believe you yourself now have done around 140 interviews just on your own Detonation ballpark. Is it about 140 now?
Yeah, somewhere in there, 135, 140 something.
But before that, you had been on another channel called Unshackled, and you had done a number of shows there already, also.
Yeah, sure.
So you progressed. You've broadened out to kind of working on your own channel now, and I think that's a good move for you. Now, I think you're a great interview, and you've done a lot of interesting interviews that I've seen and I've been parts of. But let's ask you, what makes Steele Archer Steele Archer? What got you interested in doing podcasts and being an interviewer? And I know one time I kidded you about you coming to America and taking over the Daily Show from Trevor Noah, but like we both joked, that wasn't necessarily, sometimes be careful what you wish for. But what made Steele Archer Steele Archer? What made you want to do all these interviews and do Detonation?
Well, I've always been toying around with the transhumanist community. Way back as early as 2014, 2015 was when I really started to get involved with the transhumanist community, and just reading transhumanist literature and looking at transhumanism from an interested perspective. But I also saw that apart from Zoltan Itzban, who I didn't really actually clue onto, I was friends with him on Facebook for a long time, through mutual contacts and stuff, but I didn't realize he did his immortality bus and all that sort of stuff until the show, actually, because I'm not in America, and I was actually interested in it through Gennady Stolyarov II, who's the U.S. Transhumanist Party chairman at this point in time. And I was more interested in the intellectual facets of transhumanism. And so I was, just sort of toying around with the transhumanist ideas for a long, long time. And I missed the whole Zoltan Itzban thing. And so I actually thought I could assist the transhumanist agenda in a media strategy to mainstream transhumanism, which is also the Detonation logo. But I was also very interested in debt. So if you actually look at the older episodes on that Unshackled channel, it says, imagine a future without debt, imagine a world without debt. And mainly the big reason for that is that I come from a geopolitical background, and if you dive into geopolitical issues, you very quickly work out that most of the world's problems are surrounded by issues of fiat currency, by monetary issues, and that they're all backed onto a debt-based currency system. And it's about eliminating or retooling the world from a debt-based currency system, which is why I was involved in cryptos from 2011 or 2010. Because I was a big fan of Max Kaiser, right? So, and this is the same thing with a lot of these other guys. Brett Nally is in the same shoes as I am, who's a big YouTube personality who's related to this sort of these sorts of notions, right? So so cryptocurrency always fascinated me in the fact that this is a way to relieve certain stresses on fiat currency and to allow for alternative currency systems, but also in the fact that it's fiat currency that that a lot of global issues that it's a center point of a lot of global issues. And the thing is with interest rate policy, with the Fed being able to manipulate interest rate policy, and that policy being a private policy subject to coordinations from the Bank of International Settlements, well, what ends up happening is that you end up with countries becoming companies and countries being bought and sold as companies. And that's all done through the mechanisms of 0% interest rate policies, where you get guys like Bill Gates who can buy whole countries if they want. I mean, that's just how it is. The BIS basically buys and sells countries like on the open market. And if you're an institution that's big enough, you end up with what you end up with is an apartheid wall. Okay, so you end up with institutions, banks, governments, big multinationals that can borrow at 0% interest rates and then implement structures that are impossible to defeat because they can borrow at 0%. When the rest of us, the peasantry, the smaller corps, the mid-tier corps, the mid-tier governments, the destitute governments, they all have to borrow at these higher rates. And so you end up with a two-tier, two-track, three-track system where countries and big corps and stuff end up running a lot faster than the other ones. And it's a really unfair system. And then the bigger countries, in order to maintain that advantage, they create basically they go from debt to death-based economic systems, where these entrenched sort of the policy agendas become profitable, so that they can borrow it at lower rates to funnel people through on a death-based system. Then they make more money. Then that power loop just feeds back on itself. So you end up with like a rapacious financial debt-based, death-based economic system. And that's like really like where you have to start when you're trying to sort out existential crisis, because it's a crisis of capitalism. It's a crisis of socialism. It's a crisis it's a crisis. And none of these transhumanist technologies, it's not going to work until you can start to rejig policy forums within the corridors of power. And to do that, you need arguments. That's what the Congress is. That's what the Senate is. That's what parliamentarians do in my country through democratic processes. You have to win the argument. You have to win the ideological and ideation battle, right? So you need to generate these arguments. And what's the best way to generate these arguments? You have to force people into a mechanism where you get higher IQ people who are cognizant of different problems around the world, in order to generate these problems from their own standpoint and generate solutions to these problems. And now that's what detonation comes in, because people are then forced to publicly submit solutions from their own agenda. You see, every dollar you can divert away from the death industry, you divert to the life industry. There's a ripple effect there. So every dollar is $10, if you know what I mean. So if you can begin a $100 million project, you've just amplified that to a $2 billion solution. That's 10 million lives saved. So every show, basically, if people take that out and they actually use the solutions, some of the solutions, it's not every solution is a good solution, but if you take that sort of idea out and you play with it, like every show could save a person.
Okay, so let me. I think you kind of told me about your passions. Your passions are debt and how you see the government's working, and also that you have a passion for the transhumanism. And I'm trying to interpolate that, because the question was actually why you started doing the interviews and what made you Steele Archer the interviewer. And I'm kind of feeling around the corners here that it was kind of because you wanted to get information out to people, and you feel that getting this information out is a way to help people, like you said, if people understand and stuff, that it could be. Is that on the ticket or not exactly?
Why do I want to do this? Well, it's
what actually made you want to do the interviews, or is this your way of feeling?
I always wanted. Yeah. There's a bunch of different motivations and reasons to why I would like to. I did what I did, but mainly, it's an enjoyable experience. It's something that I like talking with people that speak my language, and there's not many people on the world that speak the language that we talk, but there is a community of people that can speak that language. So basically, it's like fishing, right? It's like I was going
to ask you a question of what made you want to do. Now, you talked about sort of your passion about government and financial stuff and transhumanistic. But some people that want to talk about that, they might just go down to the pub and hang out and talk to the guys at the pub. But instead of doing the pub, you decided to share it here with interviews, and I am very glad you did, and I think you do a great job of it, and I'm glad you're doing it. But I mean, I tell you the truth, myself personally, why I got into this. I was doing some show business, and I was writing some articles and performing on stage and writing articles, interviewing people and stuff. Kind of was the next phase of doing that. So that's kind of how I got into it. And I have to admit that with myself, I can't say that there's no ego involved, because of course there is some. I mean, but so I was just curious. I mean, you could have done some of that talking to people down at the pub. Of course, you wouldn't necessarily as easily find people at the pub that necessarily had the same things you had in mind. And I kind of see that, sometimes I think that's why people join different organizations, like joining the Planetary Society, like we've talked about, or joining Explore Mars. You join those groups and work with them because you have interests, similar interests.
Okay, so in answer to your question, why do I want to do this? Because this is the only logical way to do it. Because this is one of the problems I've run into with the transhumanist community, and why I don't agree with David Kelly, even though I thank him very much for his submission of that he put in for the I am transhuman hashtag that's going around, and people should engage with the I am transhuman hashtag. David Kelly, thank you very much for that website. You're doing a great job to promote the transhumanist agenda. But I don't agree with him that the USTP is a hindrance to transhumanism, because I asked him what his ideas was, and he's changed it with this I am transhuman, because I think I had an impact on his thinking. But his idea essentially was that they just need to write more books. If you publish more books, you get more books out there. you're gonna grow the size of transhumanism. And no, I'm afraid that's not the solution. It's unfortunate, but we live in a society that's consumed by um, infotainment, that's consumed by the internet is one big advertising machine, and unfortunately I don't have any money to
Hmm.
go out and utilize the fact that it's one big advertising machine. There is a feedback loop mechanism in there, but that will take a substantial investment to do that. But what transhumanism actually needs, actually needs its community just to come out and put a name to a face and to answer the hard questions and to showcase what they're capable of in the mainstream agenda and the mainstream, under fire, whether that's a policy club or whether that's in front of facing up to questions about sustainability and longevity in a public forum. The public doesn't consume um, text and books and stuff like that, and that that's just preaching to the choir. If you want to get
Well, I
more
agree with
people
you.
interested in existential risks, it's going to take more innovation and more thinking. That's just what you have to do. So I just saw this huge lack of the motivation from transhumanists to actually go the next step. Just go over the hill and communicate with each other and talk to each other about their ideas. And I thought, well, this is an interesting void I can fill within the transhumanist community to get these people communicating together, get those ideas out there, and hopefully, assist the party. And the party is the most interesting part because that ties in the political realm. This Francis Bacon sort of notion of the scientific method, along with this timeless, brutal, application of politics in society, which is, has at the heart of it notions of power and policy change, right? So these two are not friends. These two have never been friends, and with the rise of, say, Infowars, which is inherently anti-transhuman, pro this sort of human agenda, pro this sort of humanistic agenda on a primitive level. Well, then you end up with huge problems there, because you end up with a society that's systemically scared of transhumanism. So they're scared of prosthetic hearts. Prosthetic limbs. They're scared of heart transplants. They're scared of cognitive enhancements. They're scared of getting spinal surgery. They're scared of gene therapy. They're scared of genetically modified babies. They're scared of CRISPR-Cas9. They're scared of curing cancer. They're scared of vaccines. They're scared on all these levels. They're terrified. They don't really have any real reason to be terrified, apart from the fact that Alex Jones told them to be terrified, right? So you need a way to counterbalance that. You need something to go on the other way and say, actually, no, techno-optimism isn't just something that is just for the couple of loonies out there. It's actually something that's tangible, plausible. It impacts you already, which is a really hard message to preach. And it's something that should be embraced. Otherwise, you go the way of the Fermi paradox. Huh.
So okay. So let me look at it this way. So right now, what yourself and Detonation has kind of evolved into is helping to build a community for transhumanists and doing your part to help build that. Where I also agree that just pumping out books in this day and age, there's a lot of people you limit yourself on who you're reaching, to be honest, because there's only certain people like to read books, and I think it's probably, I hate to say this because I do like books, but probably less and less people like to just read books, and they like to be able to gain information through podcasts and through this. And so yourself right now, you are helping to build the community, and I do think you are helping to build the community. So
Well, I'm not.
well, you're helping to add to it.
I'm not really here to right now to preach to the public. It's not my big concern. I don't think about, like, a lot of some people say, oh, your view count or whatever. Right now, it doesn't bother me. It's about reputation building. It's about establishing that, seeing who's real, who's not, who's part of the core community, who's willing to play, who's not. It's a test right now. And Ben Zion 2020, that should be about the views. That's where you should go for the views and for the news and for the drama and all that sort of stuff. That push people to that application, that policy over there. But I'm not terribly interested in the views. I'm terribly interested in who's real, who's not, who's willing to play. How much of a community can we build across these huge ideological differences sometimes? And I don't want to, and also a smaller view count and all this sort of stuff is it's kind of more appealing to people who especially who are right there. Like Denora Delphine, for example, is someone I really want to have. And if we were getting too many views, for example, she might feel uncomfortable with coming on, for example, because it's intimidating once you break through. And I'm not worried about the breakthrough notion and to when we can actually do this, because all the difference is there is just money. It's just money. Once you have money, you've got yourself you can apply it to a larger audience and all that sort of stuff. But right now, I think the detonation's only been around for 3 months, 4 months, 3 months. It's completely new, but I think it's changed the way people think about transhumanism almost forever. Because if I stop doing this, someone else will take the void. Someone else will fill that void. It might take 6 months or a year or something, but somebody else would build that place and say, "Hey, that was really helpful." Because you'll probably see the disintegration of the community after that. So
Well, I personally like the job you've been doing and don't want to see you not doing it. So I think you're doing a great job, and I'm glad you are doing it.
For me, it's internal. It's an internal broadcasting system at the moment. It's about community building. It's about getting people used to the fact that getting recorded, getting interviews, training. If you go back and watch the first Haywire or Ben Zion 2020 or yourself, no, yourself is different because you've been doing it forever. But a lot of these people are amateurs who've never been recorded or never done interviews before, and doing this sort of gives them that
experience and polish.
Experience. They can apply the experience that they need in order to feel confident, because they can launch from here. They can train here, practice here, a quiet, safe space, and then launch from here if they can go onto other media platforms and stuff. But also they can bolster back here for a community experience. And for me, it's still about figuring out who's part of that core community, who's willing to play, who's not. And the extent which people will work with each other within these ideological differences. You've got people who are communists, and you got people that are capitalists, and you've got people who are high progressives, and and people who are not. And it's like Trump supporters and Hillary support. I mean, you got people all over the place. And how do you manage that? And I think a lot of the internal wars, for example, on the USTP Facebook page, for example, a lot of the spats and stuff, I think a lot of that's calmed down, and a lot of that's evolved in big ways. I think since I used to just read that for fun, but a lot of it's disappearing, and they're working as a community more now, and they're realizing that they're a fragile entity as opposed to something that should be fighting each other.
Now, I did ask why you started doing the show, but let me ask you some other things. What about Steele Archer in your past, growing up and stuff, made you interested in the science and the government issues? What about your life made you interested in this stuff? I mean, I myself always point to Star Trek when I was a kid, getting me interested. But of course, that Star Trek was in reruns when you were a kid. So what influenced Steele Archer to become Steele Archer as far as growing up?
Well, religious background, born into Jehovah's Witnesses, which is essentially a cult. So, very sort of bored, I guess, bored because like once you figure out the frameworks of, of that agenda, it's boring because because the solution to every answer is the same. What should I do today? Well, it doesn't matter because the end of the world will come, and then once that comes, God sorts out all the problems, and you do. It's boring, man. It's so boring. Like you're not allowed to think. Like you're discouraged from actually thinking of solutions to problems because the problems that exist are part of Satan's system. So if you think about solutions to problems, then you're thinking about how to assist, like limp along Satan's system. So actually, you're inherently evil. If you think about longevity, you're inherently evil. If you think about, how to fix pollution problems, you're inherently evil. Because actually, it's kind of like this Christian mindset of play to pay to play or whatever. But it's this idea that if the more you do to help Satan's system of things, you're just extending the horridness in a way. Because
So how did you break out of that? I know you don't like you're not a big TV watcher, you're not a big movie watcher. Did you read a lot of books, or did you investigate a lot of stuff yourself in reading, or did you research science, or
well, you see, actually, it's quite cool because like we're not allowed. Well, I did watch a fair few movies and that, I guess, growing up, but you're discouraged from watching and consuming media anyway, which is kind of good in a way, I guess. It kind of, and there's no holidays, birthday parties, Father's Day, Christmas, Mother's Day, I don't even know, Easter, none of that. And that's fine. I've never participated. Even when I got out, I still didn't participate in those really. Actually, because I fundamentally agree with the notion that that they push, and what they push is this idea that every day is a special day. And if you want to have a special day, it shouldn't just be on these certain days, because these certain days narrow the confines of gift giving and appreciation and other things like that, which I actually agree with. I agree with that you should wake up on January the 9th and say, hey, Mr. Kurtz, here's a big present because I love you, not just because, oh, I have to give you something on January 24th or whatever.
I'll send you all my addresses, so just start sending. It's fine. But how did you get to research things and stuff and learn about things when it was
nonfiction? Nonfiction is okay. Nonfiction is okay. So you're allowed to. So I read a lot of encyclopedia. Like the one I read a lot of, and I still read to this day, is Encyclopedia Britannica. It's fantastic.
When I was a kid, I used to love World Book. We had World Book, but
yep.
When I got older, you had to read Britannica and stuff, and Americana, and the bigger encyclopedias, because the World Book there really wasn't much to World Book, you know what I
mean? yeah. So this access to information is really important, and the libraries at schools are really, really, really good, actually, if you know where to look. So yeah, World Book and these other type pictorial books are really handy, and so interested in that. But again, the problem. I mean, the problems and the solutions are all in different landscapes and different worlds. I mean, it's kind of boring because, again, if you every answer in a theological sense is always the same. So I just always enjoy talking to people about this sort of stuff and reading about it. And I told people at my church, well, like, we don't call it church, it's called Kingdom Hall, but whatever, so people understand. I would like to be a politician, and I got thrown out for that and ostracized. But not when I was 6, but because I saw that that I saw a lot of the problems, and I saw how things could be adjusted in small ways from from household waste to industrial waste to societal mismanagement to police systems to law enforcement systems or judicial systems. I always saw that there was all these different ways of doing it, and yet always discouraged in order to discuss it. So
because then you were aiding the Dark Lord, and you shouldn't be doing that.
Yeah, from a theologian, and it doesn't matter at school so much because you're only supposed to be doing your set work anyway, and it's not as bad as America. But year one you're supposed to be doing specific math sets and specific English sets. And someone who's probably on the Asperger's spectrum or autism spectrum like me or whatever, always dynamic thinking to different problem sets, and when there's like no dynamic way to adjust these sets, what happens is you get left behind. So on these other people are advancing on different levels, and then because you've been wanting to explore these other foundational paths or other paths to different foundational sets. Like, for example, I know like math, right? I know a lot of people don't like Common Core, but actually Common Core is how I think and how I used to try and do math. For me, Common Core would have worked. That's actually the way they do it. It's kind of creepy because like everybody on the planet Earth complains about Common Core, and I agree, complain about it. But actually, the way that those people do the math is actually how I've always done the math. But I was always taught to do it the way you people do it. And that confused the heck out of me. And I failed math continuously because I was just trying to adjust my brain to this way that it's completely stupid. And then I would sit there arguing with the teachers saying, we would have calculators in our pockets and mobile phones and all this sort of stuff. And they would say, no, you will never carry a mobile phone. And I was saying, that's so stupid. Look at the proliferation of so we go around in these loops, and like I'm trying to talk about computers and the implementation of algorithmic mathematical policies and computer policy. See, you go off on these tangents, right? And then and because people won't engage with you in that, they want to. It gets harder to adjust that stuff. But again, I'm a macro thinker and not a strategic planning initiative person.
I very much am a macro thinker myself, and I figure sometimes you think the macro and the micro fills in. You know what I mean? Earlier, me and you earlier had talked about some of the books I write. I do the macro and fill in the micro, and life's sort of like that. Come up with the macro. Don't spend so much time on the micro because it kind of fills itself in. But some people spend so much time and get obsessed with the micro that they don't get anything done. I mean, but now,
yeah. And what's wrong with paying your friend to do your homework? I mean, if you
that's why they have things called Fiverr today. You just go on Fiverr and you have somebody do it for you. But you couldn't do that in my day. That was I'm sorry, but you could. In my day, it was plagiarizing the encyclopedias, like you said, or you'd all get together and plagiarize together, but you'd all write you'd work on that. Each other's was a little different, but you'd still all work on it together. Not that people did things. It was funny because my dad even told me when he worked on his engineering degree that him and his buddies would get together and work on stuff together too. And it always shocks you, like, oh my God, my dad did that. You didn't think that. But now, so we talked a little bit about your past and what you're doing now. Let's ask about where you'd like to be in the future. Now, I myself like what you do. I'd love to see you come over to the United States and get yourself a show doing this on cable or something, and being more big time, and really I think you do a great job. That's what I would like to see you do. But what would Steele Archer like to see himself doing in the future?
Build myself out of this job. so basically automate this process and have other people turn this into the Democrats have CNN, the Republicans have Fox News, and the Transhumanist Party will have Transhuman News or something like that. Transhumanism TV, so TV or something. But whatever.
So you want to become a network executive. Is that it?
That would be much better. I mean, for the transhumanist cause, absolutely. Yeah, let's have news. Let's have news presenters. Let's have daily updates on emerging technology. Let's have USTP news. Let's have on the ground people who are going to conferences and events and reporting back on all the different transhumanist advances that are going on from all the different sciences, whether that be cognitive sciences or space or, industrial engineering or environment or aquaponics or the ocean, oceanography, whatever it happens to be, geopolitical stuff, like work with George Friedman at Stratfor, or whether that be, whatever that is. This job, no way, I wouldn't do this. No way. You gotta get.
You don't want to take this to the big time. You want to do something different.
I would do it. I would do it on the big time for about a week.
Well, that's honest.
Yeah, no,
That's
okay, I'll do it for the big time for a month or 6 months or something. But you actually, it's better to implement a process that, so if I die tomorrow, it's not hinging on me. I mean, what's a stupid, not saying you, but stupid thinking is I'm so important that if I die, transhumanism dies with me. No, that's not what you want. What you want is.
Well, I actually look at you as Steele Archer. I don't look at you as Steele Archer transhumanism. I look at you as Steele Archer, a person that is passionate about transhumanism. So let me push this just a little differently with my question. Let's say we're 5 years down the road. Say transhumanism is finally accepted, and it's widely accepted, and it's not really, say, something that has to be pushed as a campaign because it's accepted. What would Steele Archer see himself doing then?
It's not going to be. It's not going to be accepted. It's not. I don't buy.
I'm just saying if it was. I'm just getting.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm getting at the core of Steele Archer a little bit more than just the transhumanism. I mean, what do you think you would do with your life, or what would be kumbaya to you if transhumanism was accepted? What is it that would make you happy to be doing? I'm just curious.
Well, attending conferences, attending policy meetings, zipping in and out of the different legislative assemblies, mixing with politicians.
So you would still like to be political and have maybe be a candidate yourself in some form, or would you like to be a policymaker?
I'm a politically engaged person. That's it. Like.
What about a lobbyist? Could you see yourself being a lobbyist? Because you could always lobbyist for transhumanistic causes also.
Not me personally, but if I had to found a lobbying firm, sure. No, it's about systems implementation. So I wouldn't want to do any of this work. It's all beyond me.
You'd like to implement some good ideas and let them run, and sort of be the initiator, not the perpetuator.
Zoltan Itzban is a genius in this idea. I mean, he's not hindering his idea from running its course, and his idea is smashing together the worlds of politics and science, which is incredibly hard. And let me expand on this notion that religious communities have not spoken up against transhumanist communities. The anti-transhumanist, this anti-transhumanist action committee or whatever it's called, it's like Antifa, but in the transhumanist world, is rising. These people are rising. The techno-Luddite community is rising. People are becoming more and more wary of techno-optimists as we go forward, even because there's a lot of angst and anxiety about techno ideas. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean across all technologies. Some people are interested in space, others not. A lot of the brain sciences scare people. Cyborgization scares people. Religion has not spoken up against transhumanists. It hasn't said anything about transhumanist community yet. That's and you have to consider not just Christians when you talk about it. You have to think about Islam as well, but Buddhists, Taoists. You
Yeah,
have to
when you
think
mention
about.
religion, I don't think of just Christians. I think of all of them. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm just saying for the people out there who think it's going to be pushover because transhumanism basically proliferates in Christian countries at the moment because Christians are probably in a soft period of. They're not in the Inquisition period of like their evolution right now. They're in a sort of soft period of acceptance and tolerance built under within the structures of democratic freedoms and democratic rights and institutions, right? So there's a tolerance there, and there's an ability to have transhumanist ideas proliferate in and amongst all this freedom. And thank God for the United States being built on a freedom-based foundation, and then you have the ability with that mix of policies for the ability for transhumanism to even be an idea. Ben Zion did a Transhumanist X, which was an interview he did with a Muslim, and that was basically a censored. We don't know who Transhumanist X is because he's scared. And
Well,
and
just
Islam
for
has not.
people that don't know, Ben Zion was the U.S. Transhumanistic Party elected presidential candidate that will be running for 2020. Just for people that don't know, when you're mentioning the name, if somebody listens to this that doesn't know who Ben Zion is. So that's who he is, and he's been doing a great job. So just wanted to stick that in there for the people that might not know who that was.
Sure, no problem. Yep, and so Ben Zion, who was the USTP primary, he's the elected prime. Who said so? He did an interview with Transhumanist X, and we don't know who Transhumanist X is because it's censored. But he's a Muslim, and he's scared, but he's a transhumanist. So Islam has not yet spoken up about transhumanism at all, and it's only Christians, and so far Christians have been not spoken up about it either. Baptists were probably on the edge down there in the south somewhere, but Baptists are on the edge of speaking up about it, and they are firmly anti-transhumanist. They're anti-AI. They're quite light-eyed-ish. The Amish are passive enough because they've had to put up with a bunch of technological change, and they're weak in the fact that they don't have organized. They're not organized in a militaristic way, whereas Baptists have a lot of push and pull in American politics, and can get organized at the very smallest amount in a political way. Now they can align with other faiths and other groups across the world, but I'm telling you that transhumanism has had it easy so far. We're past peak secularism now. The demographics of the world is heading into a more religious community because religious people are having religious children on the whole. So if transhumanists think they have an easy future just because of based on the last 5 years, they are kidding themselves. They are kidding themselves.
When I said that it would be accepted, I was just doing that to see where you would go from there. But
yeah,
I agree.
I mean, absolutely. And if it was accepted, again, corridors of power. That's the only place you can go because you have to insulate yourself from the persecution that can arise.
So, I think it's a good point. I do think that anytime you have something that seems radical to people, and I think transhumanism seems radical to people, although some of us also think it's the next step. So people just don't realize that or think that. I think a lot of times, I've said before in the past, I think man is for how we seem to like change, we really don't like change. Man really doesn't like change, and they like things to be status quo, and the way business runs right now, people don't want people to live forever. Although people living long, there's just going to be new businesses that make money in new ways off of us. Just like whenever anything changes, there's going to be new businesses that we don't think of that are going to come up. Instead of, the people that run nursing homes right now are going to be upset if everybody's real healthy but then there's going to be more of other type places for people to live, probably more resorts and happier places. So they just get new places they can build and make money. Uh, I think sometimes some of the people that are fighting things should actually embrace it, because if they catch the wave, there's also profit to be made on it. But I think a lot of times they're scared. Just like when you go with new technology of other things, like going from gas cars to electric cars. When you go from burning coal to burning more gas, like we do now in our country here, there's resistance. But I do agree there's going to be even more resistance than we have, because the closer it gets and the more we move to it, there's going to be resistance. I do agree with that. So I guess we got a little bit more time here yet, but what is it? What message would Steele Archer like to get out there, other than the messages you've already got? I don't know if there's anything else that maybe you'd want to make a point of getting out to people that are listening. That is something maybe you don't talk about on your show when you interview people, but something that you'd also like to get out there.
Well, your audience is creative audience. It's an artistic audience, and I would say proliferate the idea of transhumanism through art. You can do so many amazing things with art. Art's a very spiritual, subjective experience, and if you can make a song or do a poem or do a VR thing, or draw a painting, do a painting or drawing, or build a sculpture, or or even even simulacras of the mind. If you're out there doing DMT, or if you're out there doing peyote, or if you're out there doing ayahuasca, or whatever, banging drums. I mean, transhumanism is essentially the counterculture. It's essentially the hippie movement. And you can play with that in a techno spiritual, artistic way. And if you're wondering, why is the Burning Man, or whatever, this is the new counterculture. This is the new techno spiritual movement, and you can play with this in an artistic way beyond anything people can imagine. There's so much room to play. If you think of far futurism stuff, if you think of near futurism stuff, if you're a religious person, you can invoke it into a religious a theme. I mean, it's the closest thing you're going to get to paradise Earth, with the people and the plants and the animals all living in harmony and peace and prosperity, with limitless scarcity, with no scarcity anymore. No sickness or illness or disease. So you can play with this in a pseudo spiritual context as well, as a realization mechanism. If you're into VR, if you're into this idea of the simulation hypothesis, you can invent whole new worlds that are completely outside of the physics and realms and laws of this idea. And that's a techno-spiritual transhumanist notion as well that's highly endorsed. So simulated heaven hypothesis. And if you're into that, I mean, if you're a coder out there, or somebody who enjoys computer programming or whatever, you yourself can engage in the creation of these different worlds. And hopefully maybe someday people will live in those worlds, synthetic humans, including yourself. If you educate yourself on, say, cryonics, maybe you can, wake up in 200 years and clear yourself of disease, and, go and enjoy those worlds as well. So maybe you're doing a future self a favor. So you really need to get educated on transhumanism, on the topics, on the issues, on global health initiatives, global policy initiatives, and bring that back into the artistic realm, where you can educate people that, a world of hyper spiritualism and hyper science and hyper reality can all converge in a simulacra of beauty that's crystallized in an elegant way.
Yeah, I like that. Art does convey a lot of ideas and helps get the message out there, and that is a great idea. Now, I'd like you to people listening. Maybe you could give where can people find out more about Detonation? I mean, on YouTube, it's what Detonation on YouTube. You have to look up, and what
Yeah,
other
it's
websites or places would you send people to learn about things that are dear to yourself?
so it's just Detonation. You just have to literally search that, and it'll come up with Detonation or Detonation Steel Archer. There's you can go to the Unshackled playlist if you're new and you liked the whole experience and you want to go from the start. Go to the Unshackled and check out the Detonation playlist there. There are a lot of the big hitting stuff's there. But also, if you just go to the new channel, sure, Detonation. Hit subscribe and hit the bell button so you can see when we go live. We go live all the time, all sorts of issues and all sorts of guests on there. And there's also steelarcher.com, I think. And there's, hit me up on Facebook or whatever. You can follow me there, or check out the USTP as well, transhumanistparty.org, /party.org. This is important as well. Go and click on the values or the platform or the leadership or the candidates, and check out all the different things on that website as well. And you might inspire you to see what we're up to as well. But yeah, Detonation. Just go to YouTube, type in Detonation, you'll see all the stuff right there.
So, in closing, is there anything else that you'd like to mention, Steele?
Well,
anything you think you might have missed?
Well, thank you to the community for making Detonation such an amazing place to hang out. I mean, this is an ideation place. This is where we generate ideas, and then you can go out from there and do whatever you feel like you want to do. Now, you can either endorse the transhumanist ideas, or you can actually endorse them and take them out with practical use. And what we're trying to do here is encourage people to use these ideas in practical ways. Use them so that you can, take them out into public policy or into your life, or you can come up with new inventions or devices, or into a social life. You can communicate with transhumanists more and strengthen and embolden that community, give that community courage and strength. Because there's so many beautiful, wonderful, interesting things that the transhumanist community is capable of doing. It's just actually broadcasting the message that, hey, they exist, we exist. We're trying to help you and assist you in almost every way possible on a human level, within secular values, within secular limits. We always talk about the core ideals. The Transhumanist Party supports significant life extension achieved through the progress of science and technology. So significant life extension, I mean, that's something practical that people can achieve. And that's not just, augmentation of your bodily function, enhancement. That's also supplements. That's also lifestyle choices and different diets and exercise and all that sort of stuff as well. But also, but that's part of the scientific stuff. But technology as well. And I mean, shoes are a technology, so you can go down to that basic level. Idea two: the Transhumanist Party supports cultural, societal, and political atmosphere informed by and animated by reason, science, and secular values. Right. So reason, science, and secular values, and that's what we attempt to do within the transhumanist movement all the time. But there are, like, for example, we have lots of Mormon transhumanists, or, we've had Muslim transhumanists, or different Christian type transhumanists or whatever. It doesn't mean that you can't have theology on the exterior, but the core of transhumanism is secular. And this theological conceptions, they orbit, but not in a fundamental way. They're not there to take over. That's a whole nother idea. If there's Mormon transhumanists, they have the word Mormon in front of them for a reason. They're not actual transhumanists in that way. Transhumanism is a secular idea. And ideal 3, the Transhumanist Party supports efforts to use science, technology, and rational discourse to reduce and eliminate various existential risks to the human species. And this is really important because we are bumping up on this Fermi paradox type idea where we could go extinct for a number of reasons. AI being one of these big reasons, climate being another really big reason, nuclear war, back and forth on that one. I have different ideas about that. We can go into that another day, but why nuclear war isn't such an existential threat, but why it also is an existential threat. And there's plenty of other reasons as well. Superbugs, for example. The penicillin idea. So, we're here to reduce and eliminate various existential risks to the human species, which is really important in the fact that if you want consciousness to go out of the universe to essentially drop, you don't have to support us. You can, but you can join the voluntary human extinction movement if you want to do that. But we're here to do the opposite, which is to support life extension and to support sentient beings. These emotional, intelligent creatures to proliferate across the universe and explore the depths and beyond. Explore all that there is to know. There's so much. Even if you consider the human race species to be a plague, I mean, they'll only consume really, in thinking about it, maybe one galaxy. I mean, there's trillions of galaxies out there, so that's 1 out of trillions. So even if if there isn't other ways to traverse to different galaxies, which is hopefully possible. But even if on that way, I mean, you only end up with one filled up, and so we're here to support radical life extension, science, technology, secular values, and check out Detonation if you think that's cool.
Okay, I'd just like to say in closing, Steele, that I support you and the Humanistic Party, and I've followed life extension for a long time, since the late 60s, early 70s. And but even if you were not with the party and promoting that, I like what you do, and I think even if you're doing other things and just doing governmental things, I would be supporting you. And just letting you know that I like what you do. I like how you do it. I like the passion you put behind it. So I look forward to in the future the Detonation Network, the humanistic network that you're going to be running. You should probably have a family of networks. Maybe have your own satellite system to promote them. And I very much enjoyed learning a little bit more about you. And I look forward very much to stuff you're doing in the future. And I hope to be still working with you and interview you again further on and see what you're up to, and see how your Steele Archer network is working out there. The conglomerate. You could become the maybe you can replace Comcast as the
Verizon or something. Yeah, that'd be great.
The SA network or something, for Steele Archer. But thank you very much for being with you, and hope to talk with you more in the future.
Yeah, and thank you, and thanks to all the audience there at OHS Radio. It's been an absolute pleasure, and you're a great guest to have on, and thanks for giving me so many great interviews across Detonation, the Detonation platform.
Well, thank you. Let me see you now.